The guideline on accounting for arrangements undertaken in terms of the National Housing Programme. This guideline prescribes the accounting for events undertaken in terms of the National Housing Programme. The scope inclusions is applicable to Level 1 and Level 2 accredited municipalities. Non-accredited municipalities and entities other than municipalities, for example public entities, may also participate in the National Housing Programme, and hence these entities can also apply the principles in the guideline. By analogy, all entities that apply accrual accounting can consider the guidance if they are involved in the National Housing Programme. Exclusions involve Level 3 accredited municipalities because in terms of legislation at present, no municipality has been granted a Level 3 accreditation. Also excluded is housing schemes undertaken by municipalities in their own capacity, for example social housing or houses that are rented out. The Provincial Housing Fund are also excluded from the guideline. These funds were established to secure the flow of funds from the National Department to the Provincial Department. But with the enactment of the Housing Act, the funds no longer flow through the Housing Fund, and hence the accounting for these funds are not addressed in the guideline. Before one can go into the accounting, you need to understand the legislative requirements that involves the National Housing Development Programme. First of all, there's the National Act, the Housing Act, Act number 1 of 1997, that sets out the roles and responsibilities of the different spheres. For example, national government is responsible for establishing the norms and standards. They are responsible for monitoring the performance and the allocation of funds to the provincial department and municipality. Provincial departments are responsible for determining the housing policy and to support municipalities with housing development. Municipalities are responsible for setting housing goals, to identify and designate land for housing development, and for entering into arrangements on behalf of the provincial department. The National Housing Code establishes the accreditation framework and sets out the housing policy. The accreditation framework sets out the criteria for an entity to participate in the National Housing Programme and was necessary to strengthen and support municipalities who are mainly involved in national housing development. The accreditation either as a Level 1 or a Level 2 is done by the MEC of Human Settlements. And in terms of the accreditation framework, an entity needs to have in place an implementation protocol agreement, which is an agreement between the provincial department and the municipality that sets out the roles and responsibilities. Also, that the accreditation framework requires a service level agreement and a memorandum of understanding that provides more detailed roles and responsibilities for the provincial department and the municipality. Two important concepts are addressed in the accreditation framework. First being the delegation, and secondly being an assignment. If you are a Level 1 accredited municipality, you will receive the function of delegation. This involves the exercise of a function outlined in legislation on behalf of the delegating authority. So here you are performing functions on behalf of the delegating authority, who is the Provincial Department of Human Settlements. Ultimately, the delegating authority, the responsibilities vests with the delegating authority, who can revoke this responsibility at any point in time. When you are given the function of an assignment, it means that all roles and responsibilities are transferred to you as a municipality, and this includes the transfer of the planning, the financial and the legal accountability. So let's have a look at the 4 areas that involves the roles and responsibilities. The important one is contract management. In terms of Level 1, the responsibilities involve identifying potential contractors, but important, only identifying the contractors, preparing contracts and project agreements, making use of the inspectorate to monitor any of the projects, and doing payments for contractors on behalf of the province. In the case of a Level 2, we take the function as a project developer. Here, the municipality will be responsible for the construction of the houses. They will also appoint any contractors and other service providers in their own name, and payments will be based on the contract that's entered into. With regards to beneficiary management, this involves receiving the application forms from the beneficiaries, submitting the forms to the province, marketing of the SANs, facilitating arrangements, so informing the beneficiaries that their application has been approved, and then the handing over of the houses. So for level 1, in terms of the accreditation framework, you will be a project manager, and in terms of the accreditation framework, if you receive a level 2 accreditation, you will be a project developer. Non-accredited municipality can either act as a level 1 or a level 2, and it's therefore important to assess each project in order to understand whether you are a project manager or a project developer. Also, if you are a level 2 accredited municipality, you immediately assume the responsibility of a level 1 accredited municipality. So if you are a project developer, you need to assess each arrangement to see whether you are the manager or the developer in that specific project. Various sources of funding are available. The first one being the Human Settlement Development Grant, which is used for the construction of the houses. This is a conditional grant that's allocated to the municipality in terms of the Division of Revenue Act. The next source of funding is the Urban Settlement Development Grant, which is also a conditional grant and is used for the acquisition of land from third parties, and a portion may also be allocated to the development of infrastructure, for example, water and electricity networks. If you receive a Urban Settlement Development Grant and it's allocated for land and infrastructure, for purposes of accounting, you need to split the grant between the land and the infrastructure portion. For multi-purpose funding, it's allocations to non-accredited municipalities, mainly for the development of infrastructure, for example, water, electricity, sanitation networks. So in accounting for housing arrangements, an entity first needs to consider whether it's in a principal-agent arrangement, and if so, whether it acts as a principal or agent within that arrangement. So the principles in GRAP 109 on accounting for principals and agents needs to be considered. In terms of GRAP 109, there first needs to be a binding arrangement. As discussed previously around the information in the accreditation framework, there needs to be a memorandum of understanding, a service level agreement, or an implementation protocol that's established between the Provincial Department of Human Settlements and the municipality. There needs to be third parties with whom transactions are undertaken, and in the case of housing arrangements, there are first of all beneficiaries, and secondly contractors and other service providers. The next indication is whether transactions are undertaken on behalf of an entity. So in assessing whether there are transactions, with regards to beneficiaries, one could say that transactions are undertaken on behalf of national and provincial department. This is because with regards to beneficiaries, the municipality is responsible to market the stands, to receive application forms, to communicate the approval, and they are assisting with the handover of the houses. So both for level 1 and level 2, transactions are undertaken on behalf of the provincial department, but there's no accounting implications. With regards to contractors and other service providers, when the municipality is appointed as a level 1, a project manager, transactions are undertaken on behalf of the Provincial Department of Human Settlements. This is because the Provincial Department is responsible for the appointment of contractors and service providers, even though the municipality may make use of its own supply chain management processes. Also, the Provincial Department remains responsible to fulfill the rights and obligations in terms of the arrangements undertaken with the contractors and other service providers. If the municipality is appointed as a project developer, a level 2 accredited municipality, transactions are not undertaken on behalf of the provincial department. This is because the municipality is responsible for the construction, which it can either do itself or it could appoint another service provider. So how should a project manager, a level 1 accredited municipality, account for the transaction where it was concluded that transactions are undertaken on behalf of the provincial department? First of all, in terms of GRAP 109, An entity will act as an agent if it doesn't have the power to determine the significant terms and conditions of the arrangements. Also, it's an agent if it doesn't have the ability to use all of the resources for its own benefit, and it's not exposed to the variability in results, for example, inventory risks or default risks. Looking at the requirements in the accreditation framework, the provincial department is responsible for the specifications for the construction of the houses because they need to set the housing policy. They need to select and identify the eligible beneficiaries. The transfer of the completed houses is per the list as agreed by the provincial department. In terms of the accreditation framework, the provincial department is responsible for the appointment of contractors and other service providers, and the municipality cannot use the houses or the grants for its own benefit. So in terms of applying the principle in GRAP 109, a municipality that acts as a project manager is an agent in the arrangement. Because the entity is an agent, it only recognizes the revenue and expenses that's incurred for executing transactions on behalf of the provincial department. This means that they will only recognize the commission or the accreditation fee that they are entitled to. There will be no recognition of any grants received as its own revenue, and also the houses that are constructed is not that of the municipality. The principal, being the provincial department, on the other hand, needs to account for the grant received, and they need to account for the construction of the houses both during and after completion. In accounting by the project developer, a level 2 accredited municipality, where in terms of GRAP 109 we've concluded that the municipality is not undertaking transactions in relation to the contractor and other contracted services on behalf of the provincial department. The municipality needs to consider the principles in GRAP 11 because it's undertaking the construction either itself or by appointing another contractor to do so. In terms of GRAP 11, the municipality therefore needs to recognise the grant as contract revenue, and any expenses incurred is recognised as contract expenses. Amounts due to or from the Provincial Department of Human Settlements are recognised as a payable or receivable. Again, no accounting for the houses either during the development or after the construction of the houses. The accreditation or other fees to which the municipality is entitled to for undertaking transactions on behalf of the provincial department is accounted for in terms of GRAP 9 for rendering of services. GRAP 9 requires an entity to recognise revenue from rendering of services if the amount can be measured reliably. It's probable that future economic benefits or service potential will flow to the entity. The stage of completion at the reporting date can be measured reliably, and the costs incurred and to be incurred to complete the project is measured reliably. Accounting for land. This is the portion of land that is used for housing development. An entity needs to apply the principles in GRAP 18 to assess control. The first criteria is legal ownership. The second one, the right to access, to direct the access to the land and to restrict and deny access of others. In assessing whether the municipality has the right to direct access and restrict or deny access of others, it first needs to assess whether it can direct the use of the land's future economic benefits or service potential to provide services, whether it has the ability to exchange, dispose or transfer the land, or use the land in any other way to provide future economic benefits or service potential. In applying the principles in GRAP 18, it's concluded that the municipality loses control when it enters into an arrangement with the province, because from that point forward, the land cannot be used for anything else than housing development, and the municipality therefore does not have the ability to exchange, dispose or transfer the land. So let's have a look at the accounting for the land specifically. If it is existing land that's controlled by the entity will recognize it in terms of the reason for having or using the land. When the council takes the decision to use land for housing development, it needs to be accounted for in terms of GRAP 12. And remember, the entity will de-recognize it when it loses control, which is on the date that it enters into an arrangement with the Provincial Department of Human Settlements. Urban Settlement Development Grant, the grant that is received for the acquisition of land, that grant needs to be accounted for in terms of GRAP 23. Depending at the point in time that a land is acquired, the entity can either recognize it as an asset or expense. Donations and transfer of land needs to be accounted for in terms of GRAP 23, and depending at the point of time that the municipality entered into an arrangement with the provincial department for using the land for housing development, the land is either recognized as an asset or as an expense. With regards to the accounting for some of the other assets, first of all, infrastructure assets, for example, water and electricity networks. The principles in GRAP 17 needs to be applied, and the entity needs to assess whether it controls the land, so whether it has the ability to direct the use of the specific infrastructure. With regards to vacant land, the portions of land that will be developed into, for example, a park, again, the principles in GRAP 18 needs to be applied, and this is normally based on the township development plan. An entity needs to assess at the inception of the arrangement which portions of land it controls that's going to be used for a park, for example. Community assets, for example, a clinic or a fire station, as and when these assets are constructed, the principles in GRAP 17 needs to be applied if control can be demonstrated.